The female sociosexual hierarchy. Do women have a hierarchy corresponding to men's? Now, this is a requested video, which comes from a young lady who I can only presume is very good looking, who will remain anonymous. And the short answer to her question is no. Men are the hierarchical sex, whereas women are the egalitarian sex. Hunters and gatherers, etc., etc. But we're not going to stop there. We're actually going to dive into this, because this really is one of those yin-yang questions. You know, we're going to be discussing the yin, ultimately, the hidden shadow world of female sociosexual politics. And it's all dark, it's all hidden, it's all behind the scenes, as opposed to the more obvious yang of masculine hierarchical nature. So we're going to start with the yang, but we will be getting to the yin before the video's over. So again, the short answer is that the female hierarchy is a reflection of the male hierarchy. That the woman at the top of the pecking order is merely the woman that's dating the man at the top of the pecking order. And as for the male hierarchy, the common metaphor that we use is the high school, where you've got the football team, the jocks are the alpha males, you know, with the top jock being the top alpha, and then you get the beta males, and then you get the kind of the geeks, and so on and so forth, all the way down to the gammas and the omegas. Now, I'd just like to observe quickly that this is a very degenerate sociosexual hierarchy, isn't it? And I don't mean degenerate as in that's bad. I mean degenerate as in the high school environment is very much degenerated from the more complex organic relationships that a healthy human civilization has. It's almost antiseptic. All of these teenagers being expected to form their own society without any adults or any other influence beyond the basic rules that they're all supposed to follow. So yes, it's very degenerate, it's too extreme. It's mostly been used as an attempt by men to bootstrap themselves into becoming better men. But I just need to point that out. That again, the high school environment is very weird. It's very antiseptic and it's very degenerate. High school should not be the aspirations of our lives. But nonetheless, if we're going to consider the women in high school, well, the alpha and beta women, they're competing amongst one another for the jocks. Okay, the alpha and beta jocks have alpha and beta women competing for them. The omega women, they reflect the omega males. That's the sex criminal degenerate. So the omega women become prostitutes and porn stars. The gamma women, meanwhile, they become SJWs and feminists, and they surround themselves with other gamma males. Now, a brief aside, I will note that with both the omega and the gamma women, you'll see a little bit of a role reversal, won't you? You know, whereas the porn starlet just has these sycophantic crowds of men that worship her, and so does the gamma SJW woman, who has all these David Frutrells that are just desperately sucking up to her. It's a little bit of RK theory there, where the K women compete for the alpha and beta males, but they're very feminine, whereas the women that compete for the omega and gammas take on somewhat masculine traits. So that's it. The women in high school, in this whole sociosexual hierarchy, largely compete to be recognized by the men. And the men, meanwhile, the women are proof of their accomplishment on the male hierarchy. And you know, there's some evidence in this for this in the narratives that we have as a society. I'm thinking specifically of Rescue the Princess and Betty versus Veronica. Now, Rescue the Princess. I'm sure you've all heard the feminists get very angry about this one before, where Princess Peach, she's just an object for Mario to rescue when he defeats Bowser. And it is a very juvenile narrative. But what unfortunately none of these so-called feminist critics seem to realize is that it's only the first quarter of the hero's journey. See, Rescue the Princess, it's not actually about Princess Toadstool that's being kept captive by some sort of lizard dragon dinosaur thing. Rescue the Princess is a young man seeing a woman he wants, dating a guy who's older than him and more badass than him. It's Luke Skywalker being jealous of Han Solo when Leia is attracted to Han Solo. Okay, and so the young guy imagines that the boyfriend of this girl, and the boyfriend, he's assertive, he's seasoned, he's a bit rugged, but he's not abusive. But the young man imagines that this guy is abusive, and so he puts all of this energy into defeating what he perceives to be evil. That's the first quarter of the hero's journey, and it's where Mario comes to an end. If you actually carry on with that hero's journey, what happens is that the young male hero eventually realizes that the bad guy is not his enemy, and that the princess, he had an unrealistic view of her, and she was never the reason he was doing this. That he was pursuing an adventurous path of masculine self-improvement. And at the end, he doesn't even need the princess anymore. Betty versus Veronica is the similarly juvenile female reflection of Rescue the Princess. Betty versus Veronica is all about how Betty is a nice, down-to-earth girl next door, and the guy that she wants is attracted to Veronica, who is mean and bitchy and has lots of wealth, has unfair advantages, and she's one of the cool mean girls. And Betty has to woo Archie away from Veronica through her virtue and chastity. Okay, these two plots, Rescue the Princess and Betty versus Veronica, these are hackneyed scripts that go into every single cheesy action movie and lame rom-com. Because, of course, the people writing these things are some of the most juvenile and broken people on the planet. The actual story of Betty versus Veronica, if you go past the first quarter, which most stories don't, is Betty and Veronica, either realizing that they're both the same type of people at the end of the day, and that they're each going to be attracted to their own sorts of men, or you go in a little bit of a Pride and Prejudice direction, where Betty realizes that the fact that Archie is attracted to Veronica, and that Veronica's a nasty piece of work, means that Betty never really was attracted to Archie in the first place, that she wants a man that's better than that. That's different than that. She doesn't want, Veronica with her fast and loose ways can go have a fast and loose man. Betty wants something better. Again, not covered by most rom-coms. Most of them stop at Betty winning Archie over. So yes, these are the patterns that we see. That men prove themselves to be alpha to earn a hot woman, and women compete amongst themselves to get the top guy. These are the juvenile, degraded, antiseptic narratives from high school. They are an oversimplification, but it's reflected, isn't it, in some of the metaphors that we use in the manosphere, trying to reinvent the wheel, rediscover traditional relationship wisdom. There have been two metaphors that are very effective for describing a healthy marriage between a man and a woman. The first, I think it comes from C.S. Lewis, who said that in a marriage, the man is like the foreign policy. The man's the one that goes out into the world and handles business, handles politics, handles all those sorts of things, whereas women are like a country's domestic policy. Okay, the woman keeps the house running, keeps it organized, makes sure the children are doing okay, and etc. And so when you think about nations, if you ask, what's the most powerful nation in the world, you look at their foreign policy elements, typically speaking, when you're considering geopolitics. It's not until very effeminate ages such as our own that men will obsess over which country has the best healthcare system and try and rank countries by that. It's a testament to how weak and effeminate men are now, that's how we've been ranking things. Typically, you think the most powerful nation in the world, you think like a civilization, Sid Meier's civilization score. And yet those women, or those nations with that good foreign policy also tend to have very good domestic policy. They have a very educated populace. They have a populace that is stable, that is financially successful, so on and so forth. So you don't measure a country by its domestic policy, but a good domestic policy tends to create a good country. The other metaphor, which was popularized, I believe, by Dalrock, I think he's the one that came up with it, was the captain and first officer model. And I really like this one because the captain and first officer need one another. The captain is always looking at how to deal with, the foreign policy again. Captain says, this is where the ship's going to go. This is how we're going to negotiate with these aliens, etc. Captain Picard. Whereas Riker is in charge of the crew. Making sure the ships are operating correctly, making sure that the ship is up to snuff, that it can do what it needs to do. And he will advise the captain, saying, you know what, we need to give the crew some downtime. They've been going for, 8 weeks straight. Captain and first officer. So when you say, which is the best ship in the Galactic Federation, and you can have debate whether it's the Defiant or the Enterprise, they're both very good ships, but you have that explicit ranking. The best ship in the Federation, it's not because Riker is the first officer that's the best ship in the Federation. And yet, you know what? This is the perfect time to flip it all on its head. To enter the dangerous world of the yin, of the female world, the female cooperative competition. Because the Enterprise, it's not Riker that makes it the best ship in the fleet. Okay, it is Captain Picard that makes it the best ship in the fleet. And yet, Riker wouldn't be on that ship as the first officer if he weren't the best first officer in the fleet. And so where does the first officer come from? What sort of environment does he come out of? And he comes out of an environment of cooperative competition. See, the reason I hesitate to use the term alpha woman is because alpha woman, it makes you think of those women trying to run corporations, mostly running them into the ground, who want to ban words like bossy. Imagine if you had a first officer like that, who is always trying to subvert the captain, who is always mouthing off in front of visiting dignitaries, who is always showing that he's a good captain too. You wind up with an absolute joke. You wind up with an absolutely terrible first officer. And no captain worth his salt is going to have that sort of person as their first officer. So I hesitate to use the word alpha woman, because it doesn't include all of that cooperative competition that women engage in. Because yes, women do engage in the same sort of competition, but they do it largely through helping one another, without the obvious hierarchy. And so if you imagine Will Riker before he became the first officer of the Enterprise, if you imagine him before that, he was working to get the best out of all of his cohort. All of his cohort were all working to be the best that they could be and helping one another. And their own ways, men do this too, except it's more explicit, the hierarchy. So this really gets to the core of the video. The implicit question, I think, in this video was, how do you become a woman that will attract an alpha type of a man? Men certainly talk, how do I become alpha so I can get a good-looking woman? How do you become a woman that good-looking, successful, interesting guy would want to have around? Well, 4 points on this. Number 1, become beautiful. Now notice I said become there. To a certain extent, yes, you're born with the looks that you're born with. I might want a full head of hair, but that's not in the cards for me. And yet, I will tell you, honestly, with most people, the vast majority of people, I think they're a lot uglier than they need to be. Just the way they carry themselves, the way they destroy their body through a toxic diet, the way they have so little self-respect, they put no effort into themselves whatsoever. A great deal of ugliness is a reflection of what's in the inside. And when it comes to women, especially women in their teens and 20s, they're almost all beautiful. Okay? If you're a young lady and you're looking in the mirror, you're seeing flaws. Believe me, guys don't see that. I mean, nowadays it's a little bit different with the self-mutilation going on. But becoming beautiful, actually taking care of your appearance, wearing clothes that fit, nothing crazy, just the basics, and carrying yourself in a graceful manner, this is eminently possible for all women. So that's step 1 is become beautiful. Number 2, Number 2 thing you need to do if you want to attract a good-looking, charismatic, honest, interesting man is get your life sorted away. Nobody wants to be with somebody whose life is a constant mess, a constant train wreck, somebody whose apartment is disgusting, somebody who can't keep track of their schedule, somebody that always needs to be rescued because there's something breaking down. 2 is just get a grip on your life. Get yourself sorted away, get yourself organized. Step 3, stop gossiping. Now, I recently, over on a Return of Kings article, I defended Donald Trump saying some rather crude things. I defended it as locker room talk. And the fact of the matter is that, you know what? Men do engage in locker room talk. And in this age of incredible effeminacy and weakness, having a guy that has a slight overabundance, or even a childlike abundance of masculine virility, that's a step in the right direction. But that said, I don't engage in locker room talk. My friends don't engage in locker room talk. Usually. Certainly not with women that they care about or respect. Locker room talk, it is unattractive in a man, and it is juvenile. And a man who is properly developed, who is properly fermented into masculinity, should not be doing that anymore. The same goes for women with gossip. A woman's gossip is no different than locker room talk. And so the same way that women like the strong, silent type, they like the man that's taciturn, that doesn't say too much, men like that will appreciate a woman who doesn't gossip needlessly. And the 4th and final point is make yourself useful. Have some skills, whether it be cooking or first aid. No man wants a fainting daisy, a shy violet that is just constantly needing help to do everything. Make yourself useful, not just in, knowing first aid, knowing how to deal with things, how to handle an emergency, but make yourself useful day to day, in your community, in your family. Be a useful person. You do all of this, make yourself beautiful, just take care of yourself, have some self-respect that shines through in how you dress. Because remember, you can wear whatever you want. So why are you wearing what you're currently wearing? Make yourself beautiful. Get your life sorted away. Have control over yourself. Don't gossip. Don't engage in nasty female, that horrid laughter that you get from these bachelorette parties. Just absolutely disgusting and repulsive. And make yourself useful day to day. Now, I'd like to finish off with some thoughts about the antiseptic nature of our society and what an organic society might look like. One of the difficulties we have with this cheesy, oversimplistic high school model, and now this isn't a problem with the model per se, this is a problem with our society. Even the people that scream loudest about it, the feminists that complain about dude bros and so forth, they're as much a part of this as well, they just don't like the conclusions. The problem with this antiseptic model, the problem with the high school model, is that the coolest guy in high school is going to be the guy whose dad buys him a sports car. You see, he's not the coolest guy because he's earned his position or because he's shown responsibility. It is a completely surface phenomenon. And our society as a whole is very much the surface phenomenon. And so when it comes to, quote-unquote alpha guys, a lot of the alpha guys are actually omega guys, the traveling salesman, the scam artist. A lot of the rich people in today's world are nothing but flim-flam men. They're here today, gone tomorrow. Just like the traveling salesman, I love you today and then I'm gone tomorrow. Same thing with a lot of the rich that we have, a lot of the wealthy, here today, gone tomorrow. Nothing but a scam artist. And it's just as true for the women. Look at the women that were rising up. These are the omega women. The Britney Spears, the, Kim Kardashians, these are the omega women that are being raised up. And they are the sexiest, their butt breaks the internet. But they've got no depth, they've got no material. Because again, this is antiseptic, this is unnatural. The organic way of things is not going to be quite as flashy, quite as much fun as all of this. An actual alpha man is not going to be dropping mics on the stage. That's not what an alpha man does. That's what an omega does. And the equivalent female, who I still don't want to call alpha female, because then she might start banning Bossy. The alpha female, the equivalent female, she is not going to be shooting champagne up into an arc onto her half-clothed butt. So I think one of the big challenges for men and women is to move away from these plastic, cheap, antiseptic omega versions that are constantly being sold to us. And at the same time, not go to the other extreme and the whole gamma, self-righteous, gender war, whatever. The challenge is to become the best sort of individuals that we can become, the best versions of ourselves, and then to understand what sort of person we would want to share ourselves with. That the guy that tends to be the one driving the brand new, coolest car, the guy that looks the best, probably isn't the best. And the woman that garners the most attention, when you get right down to it, isn't really even all that sexy. But to find the organic nature of ourselves, of what we're attracted to, and to relate to one another honestly. So, the female sociosexual hierarchy. Yes, it's there, sort of, but you're never going to see it directly. It's not obvious the way the masculine one is. It's hidden in cooperative competition. And the alpha woman, and you can recognize her because she's the one that the alpha male marries, the alpha woman tends to be the one who, yes, she takes care of herself, but she's also the one who is most useful, who is the most soft-spoken, and who has her life squared away. Thank you very much for the requested video. If you have a video or a topic you'd like me to cover, please click the link down below. I don't charge that much. Thanks for listening. Deus Volt, Aurini, out.